Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Again, my name is Professor Tanya Hertz, as you well know by now. This is Chapter 7, and we're going to be going over today one of my favorite chapters of the entire semester, which is entrepreneurship. So as most of you know, my background is in entrepreneurship. I've started several companies myself. I've also helped students start companies. If you're interested in starting your own company, or if you already have started your own company and you just want a little bit of extra help, or you want to develop those entrepreneurial skills, I encourage all of you to take one of the entrepreneurship courses that we offer, either through Miramar. We have several, in SDSU, for those of you who are the SDSU students. The Miramar classes that I recommend taking: Business 155, which is managing the small business; Business 157, which teaches you how to write a business plan; and 129 is a fundamentals or foundational entrepreneurship course. All of them are extremely beneficial, very successful. I've had students in the past who've taken the classes. One of the students, I was just talking to him a couple of days ago, and he told me that they just had their company revalued after 4 years at $22 million. And that's just one of many students who started and operate successful companies. So take an entrepreneurship class, and beyond those anecdotal reasons, beyond that, research supports that taking an entrepreneurship class can double the efficacy of your business, or the chance of efficacy of success in your business. So by that I mean, if you take an entrepreneurship class, you have twice as much chance of being successful in a business. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. So I'm going to share with you, and those of you who don't have it open will want to open now your PowerPoint slides for Chapter 7 so you can fill out the slides. Chapter 7 is all about entrepreneurship, and there are many reasons why entrepreneurs choose to start their own company. They might want to start a company, and you hear this a lot, because of the potential for financial reward. And that's an excellent reason to start a company, but alone it is not enough. So many people think that if you are your own boss, you don't necessarily have to work as hard. You might have read that book, The 4-Hour Work Week, wherein the author says you only need to really work about 4 hours a week in order to be successful. That may or may not be true, but research supports, and most entrepreneurs that you'll hear will say you work a lot more at your own business. It is not uncommon for entrepreneurs to work 50, 60, 80 hours a week in their own companies. It's a lot of work, and if there is not passion behind that work, you will not be successful. But there are many other reasons to start your own business. A lot of us like the independence of choosing our own schedule, the flexibility of working from home if we like. We might like the challenge of potentially starting our own company, or we might have no other choice. It might be purely for survival reasons. We might not be able to find a job with the skill set that we have now, but we want to make more money than we would maybe make in an entry-level job. So there are a lot of reasons to start a company. I encourage you, if you are going to follow your passion and start your own business, really think about it, calculate the risks carefully, and you have much better chance of success if you do something that you love. So make sure there's a passion behind there. And one other thing I was going to say, in this particular chapter, we'll be doing a little bit of myth busting. There are so many myths surrounding entrepreneurship. When I say entrepreneurship, many of you might be thinking, oh, entrepreneurs, they look a certain way. Entrepreneurs are young. They start tech startups. They're up in Silicon Valley. They're the ones who are starting companies like Facebook and Google, and that's what an entrepreneur looks like. Well, that's what maybe an entrepreneur looks like in the minds of many people, but in reality, entrepreneurs look like you, entrepreneurs look like me. The age that an entrepreneur starts his or her first company, the average age, anyone want to take a guess? It's 40 years old. You need to have that foundational experience in the particular market or the industry in which you're starting a company if you expect to be successful. And so most people actually start companies later in life, not earlier in life. In entrepreneurs, they understand there's the potential here in the United States as an entrepreneur to make a lot of money. There's nobody who's going to say, you've done enough, you've made enough money, you're done. if you're an entrepreneur, you can make as much money as you can make, but that alone cannot be the end goal. Entrepreneurs, they hope that they'll make a lot of money. They hope that they'll be able to grow, but that isn't usually the expectation. However, it happens sometimes, and if you work hard and you do your research and do everything as well as possible, you could potentially be very successful. So there are some common characteristics of entrepreneurs. Like I said, there's no one mold of an entrepreneur that everybody looks like. Everyone's different in terms of age, race, ethnicity. We all look different, but we do see some commonalities. Entrepreneurs tend to be very visionary. They tend to be wildly excited about their own ideas. They tend to have a very high internal locus of control. By that I mean they rely on themselves, although they understand the importance of delegation. And successful entrepreneurs know how to delegate tasks to others. They typically tend to be very energetic. They tend to be very confident individuals. More often than not, they're extroverted individuals, although we do see a lot of introverted entrepreneurs who start companies as a member of a team. They do have a certain level of risk tolerance, and they're a little bit, and they're comfortable with a little bit of ambiguity and uncertainty. That said, you might think of this wild cowboy of an entrepreneur saying, risk, bring it on. Entrepreneurs do not love risk because almost always they will be starting their companies with their own funds. It's very rare that they'll be starting it entirely with somebody else's money. And so they understand that risks need to be taken, and they're willing to take calculated risks. However, they don't take the wild risks that people often think. And one thing I want to say a little, and then we'll really get into the chapter, is that entrepreneurs typically start companies in today's day and age as part of a team. Very rarely do you see one person by himself or herself starting a company. Most of the companies are started with a collection of people together, 2 or more people together, and that increases the probability of succeeding in a business if you start it in a team. Okay. So I said locus of control, but I didn't tell you what that actually means. Entrepreneurs tend to have a very high internal locus of control. So locus of control is this saying that we use in psychology, which means where does the control in our lives lie? If you have an internal locus of control, you understand that you control your own life. You take responsibility for what happens in your life. If something goes wrong, of course there are external causes here and there, but you understand by and large that you can impact what happens in your life. Where people with an external locus of control tend to blame other people, they tend to always focus on luck and actions of other people and chance, rather than saying, no, there's something that I did. I could have changed my own, my own path in life. So people with internal locus of control tend to be very self-reliant. They tend to be more optimistic. They actually tend to work quite a bit harder. They tend to be very high in self-efficacy, so they think they can do it, where the opposite is true with external locus of control. External locus of control tend to be very neurotic people, blaming others. All right. So I'm going to do another myth bust right now. So one of the myths that people think you write a business plan, and then you take that business plan into the bank, and then the bank says, good job, Tanya, you had a great business plan. I'm going to give you $75,000 to start your business. That doesn't happen. It is almost impossible to get a loan from a bank to start your own company. The vast majority of companies are started at least in part through personal resources. And there's an adage that we have, a little idiom that we have in entrepreneurship, where we say that who funds new businesses? Well, it's the 3 F's of entrepreneurship. So people who fund new businesses, other than the entrepreneur, him or herself, are friends, family, and who's the 3rd F? Fools. Right? It's hard to get money from outside sources. So a lot of entrepreneurs you'll see will be taking out a second mortgage. They'll max out their credit cards. They'll do whatever it takes to make it start. Now, loans are possible. Typically, like we'll talk a little bit about the SBA in a little bit, but the Small Business Association is a government-backed agency that helps entrepreneurs get loans, usually not to start a business from scratch. That's usually after you have proof of concept and you've started your company and you show, hey, this is working. Then it's a lot easier to get money. Also, one of the most popular new sources of getting money today is crowdfunding. It's really cool. Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I'm trying to think of a few more. CrowdRise is one I can think of. Well, you can look them up. There are dozens and dozens of crowdfunding platforms, all with a different slant of the kind of businesses that you can fund. And essentially, through crowdfunding, you can raise money to start your own company from the crowd, from the people on the internet. And usually, if you are trying to get money through crowdfunding, you have to give something in order to get something. By that, I mean either equity in the company, but usually more advanced purchases of a product or services. But sometimes you can do it totally without giving anything. We can also get money through angel investors or VC firms, venture capitalist firms. This is a little bit more rare. So angel investors typically only give money to companies that are likely to grow at least 30 to 40% per year. And they're looking for what we call startups. So a startup is not the same thing as a new venture or a new company. I mean, it is a new company, a new venture, but it's different in that a startup is the kind of company that we expect to grow very, very, very rapidly. So at least 30 to 40% per year. We expect a startup. We also call these gazelles. They're rapid growers. And so angel investors and particularly venture capital firms only want to give money to those companies that have those extremely high growth potential. So angel investors invest in a very small percentage of companies that are started. Venture capitalist firms, even smaller. So the way that you get money from an angel investor or venture capital firm, you pitch your idea. If you take one of my entrepreneurship classes, I'll teach you how to do that. And we do an elevator pitch, we do a pitch deck, and you typically do this through an incubator, a business incubator. We're starting an incubator on Miramar College campus. So if you're interested in these things, take one of the entrepreneurship classes. We go into a lot more detail. All right. So this slide lists the different opportunities available to small businesses and also some of the threats that they face. So small businesses can exploit narrow but profitable market niches. They can, and they often, these market niches that they exploit are usually ones that are overlooked by the big companies because they're too small for the big companies to make money. But we as entrepreneurs, we start small and then we grow. Right? They usually offer better customer service. They're able to maintain lower overhead costs. You've heard the sayings of people starting their companies out of their garage, right? And this is pretty common. Because they typically have a smaller customer base when they start, they're better at developing personal relationships with individual customers, which is particularly important in today's day and age of business. And what do we call this particular point in business history in which we are in? What is it called? The relationship era, right? And so that's why it's so important and why entrepreneurs are really benefiting. What else was I going to say? Oh, we're also good as entrepreneurs to use technology to our benefit. That doesn't mean that we're creating necessarily the new technology, but we're exploiting it. We know what's out there. We go out, we find it, we use it. We call this the term that, I don't know if other people call it, they've called this other term that we use in entrepreneurship is called bricolage. It's also used in art. And I use the term digital bricolage for what entrepreneurs do. Basically, we take all the technology out there, little pieces here and there, and we use it for our benefit. What else was I going to say? Entrepreneurs are good at lowering overhead costs because they typically will do a lot of it themselves. That's why we tend to work long hours. What else did I want to say? Well, some of the threats on this slide also that small business face that you have to go into eyes wide open. High risk of failure. If you're starting a business from scratch and you don't have and you've never done it before, then you don't have that knowledge or experience. Typically don't start a company with a lot of money. To be entrepreneurial means to be operating on a shoestring budget. Have you ever heard the term bootstrapping? We as entrepreneurs, we bootstrap. We do more with less. And they can be expensive. All right, moving on. Let's move on to the next slide. As an entrepreneur, you need to know the agencies out there that are there just to help you. That's all they're there for, including the SBA, Small Business Administration. It is an agency of the federal government, and they're there to help you as an entrepreneur. They're there to help you to get loans from, they don't give loans themselves, but loans from commercial banks. They're there to give you advice. They're there to protect you. They're there to, they can even help you with their business plan. Although they would probably, if you were writing a business plan, they would probably either refer you to take one of my classes or to go to SCORE, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Another agency that I'd really like you to get to know is the SBDC, Small Business Development Center. There's, we actually have one located on Miramar College. It will be in our Entrepreneurship Center as soon as that starts. But for the time being, we're operating out of my office, and we can put you in contact with people who can help you start your business from scratch. Or not the only way to start a business. So this is another misconception. I'm going to do another little bit of myth busting. A lot of people think if you want to be considered an entrepreneur, that means you have to start a company from scratch. Not so. There are many different ways that you can become an entrepreneur. You can start a company from nothing, or you can buy an existing company, or you can buy into a franchise, or you can become a partner with somebody who's starting a company. There's many different things that you can do in order to be considered an entrepreneur. The important, or not just important, the imperative component is that you have ownership of the business. If you don't have ownership and you're just working for a company, you're an employee, not an entrepreneur. So here are the pros and cons of starting a business from scratch. And the next slide shows you the pros and cons of buying an existing business. There are benefits and drawbacks to each. Sometimes it's easier to start or to buy an established business. If you do buy an established business, I highly recommend that you do so with the help of somebody who knows what they're doing and can help you, particularly if you're buying real property associated with the personal property. Use an agent. Use a broker. And use a broker who knows what they're doing. Again, if you need me to put you in touch with somebody, shoot me an email. I know everybody in this field, and I'm happy to help. All right. So, entrepreneurs, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, before you start your company, you need experience. You need experience. Just because you're starting a company maybe from scratch does not mean that you shouldn't have experience in that particular industry, in that field. Get that experience. Do it. Take a class, get a mentor, work in the field. On average, entrepreneurs usually work about 3 years in the field before they actually start a company. I'm sorry, I take that back. Successful entrepreneurs work about 3 years. If you want to fail, don't work in the field first. So I always say this to my students in my entrepreneurship classes. If you ever see me working, you happen to walk into some, I don't know, customer service place or a bar or something, and you see me working behind the counter, I promise you it's not because that I've done bad choices in my life and I lost all my money or anything. It's probably because I'm thinking about buying a bar or whatever it is, and so I'm getting some experience in that particular field. To get some experience, maybe you can do it with maybe less than 3 years if you get support from elsewhere, but definitely want to have some experience. Also, take advantage of the resources out there. The SBDC, like I said, wonderful resource. They're affiliated with the SBA, and we do have a local office at Miramar College, and I'll put you in touch with who you need to be in touch with to do it. Also, like I said before, I'd mentioned SCORE. SCORE is a group of retired entrepreneurs and retired executives who just want to give back. And so they give advice. They give counseling to new entrepreneurs. The cool thing about SCORE is they're really great about helping you to build a business plan. So not every company is started with a business plan. Not every entrepreneur writes a business plan in today's day and age. A lot of us use different tools like the business model canvas. Again, we can go so deep into this, but just on the surface, SCORE is there to help you to write a business plan. They're there to help you to start your company. It's a lot easier to be successful if you have a mentor, and they basically provide mentors. So, like I said, not everybody writes a business plan, but writing a business plan can help you be more successful. So in the olden days, business plans were used because this is how we got a loan. Today, we still need a business plan if we want to get a loan, but we don't necessarily need that before we start a company. Now, does that mean you shouldn't write it before you start a company? Well, no, because that's not the only function of a business plan. A business plan also helps you to map your idea, or to take your idea from an idea stage, from this conceptualization stage, all the way to the market and to where you're actually making money. It can help you, obviously it's projections, there's some guessing in there, but this can help you to decide what to do next. It gives you a map. How do you know how to get from A to B with no map? A business plan is a map. Yes, you wrote the map yourself, but it gives you something to follow. So businesses are important. Small businesses are important. Entrepreneurship is important. It is so important to the U.S. economy. 99% or more of all of the businesses in the United States are technically considered by the SBA small businesses. Now, it's pretty large to be considered small by the SBA and by the federal government and the IRS. You have to have less than 500 employees to be considered a small business. So that's actually pretty big. But still, small businesses, entrepreneurial businesses, they're the ones who are pushing our economy forward. These businesses are the ones that are creating all the new jobs, that are responsible for all of the technological advances that we see. These are the people who move into the inner cities and change the inner cities. If you want to see why did East Village become what it is today, well, it's because of entrepreneurs. It's because of small businesses. Why isn't it still like it was in the 1980s, which is just, and you think there's a lot of homeless people there today? Well, go back to 1984 and see how many homeless people and drug addicts and just disadvantaged people were living in that area. It was an area that most people wouldn't walk to in the broad daylight, let alone at night. And the people that turned it around, it was not just the big projects like the Petco Park and downtown San Diego putting in the library. It was all those small businesses that took that risk and went in there. So they're good at doing that, small business owners. All right. We need entrepreneurs to make sure that new ideas become reality. And there's one more myth I'm going to bust before we end it, and that is that if you have an idea, you need to keep that idea to yourself and never tell anybody. And the idea is everything, and you have to come up with this brilliant idea if you want to be successful. Yeah, right. Most businesses are not started with these groundbreaking, ridiculously amazing ideas. There's nothing new, essentially, under the sun, although we find ways to make things new. It is not the idea. It is the implementation. So the idea is important, yes, but beyond that, it's you. It's being the right person, taking that idea and making it into something real. And that's what entrepreneurs do. We have a lot of entrepreneurship in the United States. Entrepreneurship raises the middle class. Entrepreneurship tends to be lower in areas in other countries. It's lower in areas that, particularly countries that don't support entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are successful in the United States because we encourage people to be entrepreneurs, and we have a pretty healthy view towards failure. Failure, it's not such a bad thing. It's okay if you fail in entrepreneurship. Failure is a way that we learn, and so it's good to know that. It's good to understand that. Obviously, we don't want to fail if we can avoid it, but I think that also helps. All right, that's chapter 7. I will see you all in chapter 8. Have a great rest of your day, evening. I don't know what time you're watching this, but have a good one. We'll see you on the next.